Today, we're going to talk about something many of us have felt, but maybe couldn't quite put a name to: the psychology of disconnection. Have you ever been there? In a room full of people, maybe even friends or family, and you just feel this profound distance? You might be part of the conversation. You might even be smiling, but inside, you feel completely separate. If that feeling sounds familiar, the most important thing to know is this: psychology suggests it's not a sign that you're flawed. It's actually a very complex and very human psychological response. Many people describe it as feeling like there's an invisible wall between them and everyone else. So let's talk about what that wall is actually made of. That feeling can be so confusing, right? It almost always leads to that internal voice that asks, why do I feel this way? I'm supposed to be having fun, connecting. That kind of self-doubt is a really common part of the whole experience. Now, to really understand what's happening here, we have to make a crucial distinction. This feeling of emotional disconnection, it's not the same thing as loneliness. See, loneliness is usually about a lack of social contact. You wish you had more people around. But disconnection, that can happen when you're completely surrounded by people. It's not about the number of people. It's about a missing sense of emotional alignment with them. And that's really the heart of it. Emotional disconnection is when your interactions start to feel, well, performative. The conversation is happening, the words are being said, but that deeper feeling of being seen and understood just isn't there. And this is why that distinction is so vital. If you try to fix disconnection the way you'd fix loneliness, by just forcing more social plans, it can seriously backfire. Sometimes more shallow interactions can actually make you feel even more disconnected than before. So if it isn't about not having enough people around, what's really driving it? Well, psychology often points to the ways certain minds are wired, which brings us to this idea of the deeply processing mind. Research suggests there are often three main things working together here: a tendency for deep emotional processing, a very high level of self-awareness, and sometimes a protective distance that we've learned from past experiences. Okay, so let's start with deep processing. Some minds just naturally reflect more, notice the little things, and think in layers. But a lot of our day-to-day social life, small talk, casual updates, it kind of stays on the surface. And for a deep processor, that can feel really unsatisfying, even draining. And over time, this can really start to feel like you're speaking a completely different emotional language than the people around you. Your inner world is so rich and nuanced, but it rarely feels mirrored back to you in conversation. The second driver is high self-awareness. Now, this is usually a strength, but it can create something called the observer effect. Instead of just being in the moment, you're also watching yourself from the outside, analyzing what you say, how you act. And that self-monitoring is what builds that invisible barrier. And finally, sometimes that distance is simply a form of protection. If you've learned from past experiences that being truly open and vulnerable just leads to being misunderstood, well, your mind might have learned to keep a safe distance. It's a defense mechanism. You might crave that connection, but your system has learned that it feels safer without it. So all of this brings us to a really important shift in how we look at this. What if this feeling isn't a problem we need to solve? What if it's actually a sign of depth? You see, many people who experience this kind of disconnection also have these incredible strengths. They tend to have really rich inner worlds, a huge capacity for insight, a lot of creativity, and a deep preference for what's authentic over what's just popular. When you start to see it through that lens, you realize something profound. This feeling of disconnection, it's not a sign of emptiness. It's a sign of selectivity. Your mind isn't empty. It's just being very careful about what it lets in. It's waiting for something that truly resonates. Probably the healthiest way to think about this feeling is to see it as information. It's a signal. It's your psyche telling you exactly what kind of connection you need. And it's not about adjusting yourself to fit in. It's about finding true alignment. So feeling disconnected doesn't mean you're failing at being social. It often just means you're someone who navigates the world with a bit more depth and awareness. It's a quiet reminder that you're not meant to connect with everyone. And you know what? That's perfectly okay.